I deleted the file at 3:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. $450 million gone with one keystroke. But let me back up a bit because the story starts earlier that morning when I should have seen it coming. The name's Robert Callahan, but everyone calls me Bob. I'm 53, been writing code since most of these kids were in diapers, and I've got the kind of mainframe knowledge they don't teach in boot camps anymore. You know, the boring stuff that keeps billion-dollar companies from imploding when someone clicks the wrong button. I knew something was wrong when Stephanie from HR knocked on my cubicle wall and said, "Hey Bob, you missed initialing the updated NDA." I never miss anything. That's why TechBridge Solutions ran like a Swiss watch instead of a broken toaster for the past 18 years. Still, I signed the paper, handed it back, and went right back to configuring the security system for the $450 million global tech merger. That morning, I had 2 monitors running database queries, a lukewarm coffee, and a sticky note that said, "Verify Clause 12C" in my own handwriting. Behind me, the office buzzed with the usual startup energy. Project managers acting like they invented project management, developers debating whether Python was sent from heaven, and some intern playing music loud enough to wake half of Phoenix. And there I sat, alone in my corner cubicle, reviewing the final compliance documentation for global tech. My digital signature was embedded in every critical security protocol. Third-party authorization, federal compliance liaison, legacy system bridge architect. I was the guy who made sure their shiny new acquisition didn't crash and burn when they tried to connect global tech's creaking old systems to our cloud infrastructure. 18 years. That's how long I'd been the guy they called when everything went sideways at 2 a.m. Not the ping-pong playing crowd, not the culture committee warriors writing manifestos about work-life balance. Just the old guy who knew where all the digital bodies were buried and how to keep the lights on when the fancy new systems decided to take a nap. The only people who really understood what I did were the ones who knew how fragile everything actually was. Terry in legal, Patricia at Global Tech's compliance office, my old manager before he retired to his fishing boat in Florida. Everyone else just saw Bob from IT, quiet, reliable, the guy who fixed things without making a fuss. Then Nathan Torres showed up as our new COO 3 months ago, and I could smell the change coming like a storm front moving across the desert. Nathan was mid-40s, all jawline and buzzwords, wearing suits that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. He had that consulting firm energy, the kind of guy who thinks disruption is a personality trait and calls Excel spreadsheets data visualization platforms. Every meeting with him felt like listening to someone read from a business school textbook, but that particular Wednesday I was focused on the technical stuff that actually mattered. I logged into the mainframe system to update the final security certificates. The global tech deal was supposed to close in 72 hours. My authorization was the last piece of the puzzle. Everything else was locked and loaded, months of integration work, federal approvals, audit trails, the whole 9 yards. The security system I'd built was like a digital lock with multiple keys. Global Tech's old mainframe could only talk to our new cloud systems through the bridge I'd created, and that bridge required my personal authentication key to verify that everything was legitimate for the federal regulators. But something felt off that morning. Call it instinct, call it paranoia from dealing with corporate politics for 2 decades. I opened my personal folder marked emergency documentation and double-checked the papers I'd flagged months earlier. Because here's what nobody at TechBridge ever understood. I didn't just build systems for them, I built them to protect myself. When you've seen enough reorganizations and right-sizings, you learn to read the weather. The free bagels should have been a dead giveaway. They always bring food when they're about to deliver bad news. The all-hands meeting was called for 10 a.m. sharp. Team restructuring and strategic updates, the email said. Corporate speak for someone's getting the axe. Nathan Torres took the stage like he was addressing shareholders at Goldman Sachs. He talked for 45 minutes about agility, modernization, and legacy technical debt. That last phrase hit my ears like fingernails on a chalkboard. Legacy technical debt. Like the systems that kept this place running for nearly 2 decades were some kind of embarrassing family secret. People around me nodded like he was revealing the secrets of the universe. I just kept sipping my coffee and mentally calculating how many critical systems would crash if they actually followed through on half his ideas. Austin, my young assistant, caught my eye from across the room and gave me a look that said he was thinking the same thing. Nathan wrapped up with the usual closing remarks about exciting times ahead and embracing change. Then he smiled that consultant smile and said the words that should have sent everyone running. We're committed to building a more agile, forward-thinking technical foundation. Translation, the old guys are done. 3 hours later, Stephanie knocked again. This time she brought backup. 2 people from HR, one with a folder, and one with the dead-eyed stare of someone who'd done this dance before. "Bob, can we talk privately?" They led me to a conference room like I was carrying a contagious disease. No pleasantries, no eye contact, just a manila envelope slid across the table like evidence at a crime scene. The letter inside was pure corporate poetry, strategic realignment, shifting core competencies. Your role no longer aligns with our forward-thinking vision. I was still reading when clipboard lady said, "You'll need to return your badge and equipment by 3 p.m. today." The other one added, "Security has been notified." I stood up, walked to the door, and stopped. On the reception desk, right next to the wilted office plant, was a printed photo of my face. Someone had written in red marker, "Do not allow re-entry. Not former employee, not Bob Callahan, just a security threat." I stared at that photo for maybe 10 seconds. Then I walked back to my desk. Austin appeared at my cubicle before I'd even sat down. Kid was 26, sharp as a tack, and one of the few people in the building who actually understood what I did all day. "Bob, this is insane," he whispered. "They can't just—" "They can," I said, starting to pack my things into a cardboard box, and they did. "But the global tech integration, you're the only one who knows how the authentication system works." I looked at him, really looked at him. This kid got it. He understood that they weren't just firing their IT guy, they were pulling the keystone out of a very expensive arch. "Austin, let me ask you something. In all the meetings you've been in about this merger, how many times has anyone asked about the technical details of how the systems actually connect?" He thought about it. "Never. They just assume it works." "Right. They assume." I sealed up the box and picked it up. "Well, now they get to find out what happens when you assume." I handed him my badge. No speech, no threats, just a quiet, "Take care of yourself, kid." Then I walked out to my truck, sat behind the wheel, and pulled out my phone. The mainframe system app was still logged in. I navigated to the global tech integration protocols, found my personal authentication key, and looked at it for a long moment. 18 years of building systems, fixing problems, keeping things running. 18 years of being the guy they called when everything broke. And now they'd decided I was legacy technical debt. At 3:47 p.m., I pressed delete. The key disappeared from the system. Without it, Global Tech's compliance systems couldn't complete the federal handshake required for the acquisition. Without me, they were holding a $450 million deal with no way to close it. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just drove home, hands steady on the wheel, because they thought they were moving forward, but they'd just burned the only bridge that mattered. When I got home, I didn't even take off my jacket. Just stood in the kitchen staring at my keys like they might disappear if I looked away. The house was quiet. No Slack notifications, no quick question emails that turned into 3-hour troubleshooting sessions. For the first time in 18 years, my phone wasn't buzzing with work problems. I went straight to the hall closet and pulled out an old fireproof box from behind the Christmas decorations. Inside were folders labeled in my neat handwriting: legal, compliance, system architecture, emergency protocols. I found the one marked contingency and flipped to the Global Tech merger. Documentation. There it was, buried in the fine print of Clause 12C, termination of designated liaison without formal replacement and recertification, voids compliance status and suspends legal standing of acquisition protocols. Plain English, fire me without training a replacement, and the deal becomes worthless paper. My signature was supposed to go on the final authorization. Without it, Global Tech couldn't pass the federal compliance checks. No handshake, no merger, no exceptions. I sat back in my recliner and let that sink in. They didn't just fire their IT guy. They'd cut the power to their own money machine. The call came the next morning at 8:15 a.m. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. Global Tech's compliance officer sounding confused and slightly panicked. "Hi, Bob. This is Patricia Webb from Global Tech Compliance. We're showing an authentication failure on the final security protocols. The system won't accept any substitute authorizations. Could you give me a call when you get this? We're supposed to close tomorrow." I played it twice, then deleted it. An hour later, Nathan Torres called directly. I watched his name flash on my screen and sent it straight to voicemail. Bob, look, there seems to be some kind of technical glitch with the merger protocols. Patricia at Global Tech is saying something about your access credentials. Can you call me back? This is probably just a simple fix. A simple fix, right? I made myself breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, real breakfast, not the granola bar I usually grabbed on my way out the door. Then I sat on my back porch with coffee and watched the neighbor's dog chase lizards in the desert heat. My phone kept ringing. By Friday, the panic had set in. I got a text from Austin. They're freaking out here. Legal is blaming it. It is blaming compliance. Nathan's locked in meetings all day. Someone mentioned your name like 50 times. What did you do? I sent back. Nothing they didn't do to themselves. Which was technically true. I hadn't done anything malicious. I'd just removed myself from a system they no longer wanted me to be part of. The emergency all-hands meeting was called for Monday at 9 a.m. Critical project updates, the email said. Translation, damage control. But I wasn't on the invite list anymore. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I worked on my 1967 Mustang in the garage, changed the oil, cleaned the carburetor, polished the chrome until it gleamed. The car had been my dad's, and I'd been promising myself I'd restore it properly for about a decade. Funny how you suddenly find time for things when you're not fixing other people's problems at all hours. Monday afternoon, my lawyer Daniel got a call from TechBridge's legal department. They wanted to discuss transition protocols and knowledge transfer requirements. Daniel's response was beautiful. Mr. Callahan is no longer employed by TechBridge Solutions. He has no contractual obligations regarding proprietary systems or ongoing projects. Should your organization require his expertise, Phoenix Tech Consulting LLC is available for engagement. Standard consulting rates apply. I'd filed the LLC paperwork over the weekend. Took about 20 minutes online. Phoenix Tech Consulting had a nice ring to it. Tuesday morning brought the official news. Global Tech sent a formal letter to TechBridge. Due to unresolved compliance gaps in the security authorization chain, Global Tech Industries is suspending all acquisition proceedings pending resolution of third-party authentication requirements. Corporate speak for, your guy had the keys, you fired him, deal's off. Austin texted me a screenshot of the company stock price. Down 15% before lunch. Holy shit, Bob. They're losing their minds. I texted back, language kid. But I was smiling when I typed it. Wednesday brought the first real panic call. Nathan Torres, no longer trying to sound calm and collected. Bob, I know you're upset about the restructuring, but this is bigger than both of us. We need to resolve this authentication issue. Global Tech won't accept anyone else's credentials. They're saying something about federal regulations. I let him finish his little speech, then said, Phoenix Tech Consulting charges $400 an hour for legacy system consultation. Minimum 40-hour engagement. Payment up front. Long silence on the other end. Bob, be reasonable. That is reasonable. It's what you pay when you fire the only guy who knows how your systems actually work. We can't pay contractor rates for something that should be a simple knowledge transfer. Then I guess you have a problem. I hung up. The rest of the week was interesting. Austin kept me updated via text. Apparently the building had turned into a war zone. The legal department was demanding to know why they hadn't been informed about the compliance requirements. The IT department was scrambling to understand systems they'd never bothered to learn, and Nathan was having very loud, very heated conversations behind closed doors. Thursday brought a courier to my door with an offer letter. Director of Legacy Systems, 30% salary increase, stock options, company car. I had Daniel respond. Mr. Callahan appreciates the revised offer. However, he is no longer seeking employment. Phoenix Tech Consulting remains available for project-based engagements at the previously quoted rates. Short, professional, final. Friday morning, the hammer fell. Global Tech officially pulled out. The press release was brutal and to the point. Due to irreconcilable technical and compliance issues, Global Tech Industries has terminated acquisition proceedings with TechBridge Solutions. We remain committed to pursuing strategic partnerships that align with our operational standards. Corporate speak, but with teeth. Translation: these people are incompetent, and we're done wasting our time. Austin texted me the news before it even hit the financial blogs. It's over. They're done. Nathan just walked out of the building. I was in my garage, underneath the Mustang, replacing the exhaust system when my phone buzzed. I rolled out on the creeper and read the message twice. Nathan Torres had resigned. Not fired, not reassigned. Resigned. Probably hoping to get out before the board started looking for someone to blame for losing $450 million in projected value. The stock price dropped another 12% that afternoon. Someone leaked the story to TechCrunch. Arizona firm loses major acquisition due to personnel management issues. They didn't name TechBridge directly, but anyone in the industry could connect the dots. By Monday, 3 more executives had decided to pursue other opportunities. The CFO, the VP of Strategic Initiatives, and Stephanie from HR. Apparently, someone on the board had started asking uncomfortable questions about why they'd fired their compliance liaison 3 days before a major deal closure. Austin called me that evening. Kid sounded exhausted. "Bob, it's chaos here. They brought in some consulting firm to try to reverse engineer your authentication system. They've been at it for 72 hours straight and can't figure out how to recreate the federal compliance bridge. That's because it took me 8 months to build it properly," I said. "And it's not just code, it's documentation, regulatory filings, certification processes. You can't just copy and paste that stuff. The interim CTO asked if I knew how to contact you." "What did you tell him? That Phoenix Tech Consulting has a website now?" I laughed. The kid was learning. Tuesday brought another courier, this time with a different kind of envelope. Thicker paper, official letterhead, the kind of presentation that screamed, "We're serious now." Inside was a formal contract offer, not employment, consulting. Phoenix Tech. Consulting LLC, 6-month engagement, $400 per hour as requested, plus a $50,000 signing bonus. I read it twice, then called Daniel. "They want to hire me back as a contractor to fix what they broke?" "That's what it looks like. The terms are exactly what we quoted, plus the bonus, which suggests they're desperate." "How desperate?" "Well, their stock is down 23% from last week. The board is reportedly considering a class action lawsuit against the previous management team. And according to my contacts, Global Tech isn't just walking away. They're actively telling other potential partners about TechBridge's operational deficiencies." I sat in my kitchen, looking out at the garage where my Mustang waited for its next upgrade. For 18 years, I'd been the guy who fixed things when they broke. But this time, I hadn't broken anything. They had. "Daniel, send them a counterproposal. Phoenix Tech Consulting will consider a consulting engagement under the following terms: $500 per hour, 3-month maximum commitment, payment weekly in advance, and full creative control over the technical implementation. Oh, and one more thing. What's that? I want Austin Rivera hired as my assistant on the project. Same consulting rate structure. You want to bring the kid with you? He's the only one left there who actually understands how things work. Plus, he deserves better than watching that place burn down around him." Daniel laughed. "I'll draft it up." The response came back in 4 hours. Accepted. All terms. They even agreed to Austin's consulting arrangement. That evening, I called Austin. "How would you feel about leaving TechBridge and working for Phoenix Tech Consulting for a while?" Long pause. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Same money you'd make there in a year, but we'll earn it in 3 months. Plus, you'll learn how to build systems properly instead of just maintaining other people's mistakes." "Bob, Yes, absolutely yes." "When do we start?" "Monday." "And Austin?" "Yeah? Bring your documentation on everything they've tried to fix since I left. I want to see exactly how deep a hole they've dug for themselves." That weekend, I finished the exhaust work on the Mustang and took it for a drive through the desert. The engine sounded perfect, smooth, powerful, properly tuned. Amazing what you could accomplish when you had the right tools, enough time, and nobody standing over your shoulder telling you how to do your job. Sunday evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Well played. Patricia Webb, Global Tech." I smiled and deleted it. No reply needed. Monday morning, Austin showed up at my house at 8 a.m. sharp, laptop bag over his shoulder and a stack of printed documents under his arm. "So," he said, settling into the home office I'd set up as our temporary headquarters, "want to see the creative ways they've tried to rebuild your authentication system?" I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him. "Show me everything." For the next hour, Austin walked me through the disaster. They'd tried to hire 3 different consulting firms to reverse engineer the compliance bridge. None of them understood the federal regulatory requirements. They'd attempted to rebuild the authentication system from scratch, twice. Both attempts had failed federal testing. Most entertaining of all, they'd tried to contact Global Tech directly to negotiate some kind of workaround. Global Tech's response had been professionally polite and absolutely final. No exceptions to federal compliance requirements. So, here's where we stand, Austin said, pulling up the latest attempt on his laptop. They've got maybe 2 weeks before the board loses patience completely. Global Tech has moved on to evaluating other acquisition targets, and nobody at TechBridge really understands what you built or how to fix it. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Perfect. Let's go save their company. Austin and I walked into TechBridge Solutions on Monday morning like we owned the place, which in a way, we did. They needed us more than we needed them, and everyone in that building knew it. The interim CTO, a nervous guy named Rodriguez who'd been promoted way above his comfort level, met us in the lobby. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Bob, thank God you're here. We've tried everything, but the federal compliance system just won't accept any of our authentication attempts." "I know," I said. "That's because you fired the guy who built it." We set up in the same conference room where they'd handed me my termination letter. Austin spread out his documentation while I opened my laptop and connected to their network. Within 30 minutes, I had a complete picture of the damage. They'd broken everything. Not just the authentication system, but the underlying security architecture, the data flow protocols, even the backup systems. It was like watching someone try to fix a Swiss watch with a sledgehammer. "Here's what we're going to do," I told Rodriguez. "Austin and I will rebuild the compliance bridge from scratch. It'll take about 6 weeks, cost you roughly $120,000 in consulting fees, and when we're done, you'll have proper documentation so this never happens again. Can you guarantee Global Tech will come back to the table?" I looked at him for a long moment. "No, that bridge is burned. But you'll have a system that works for whoever you find next, if anyone wants to deal with you after this mess." Rodriguez winced but nodded. What choice did he have? The work was actually enjoyable. Austin turned out to be a fast learner with good instincts. More importantly, he asked smart questions instead of just assuming he knew how things worked. We rebuilt the authentication system properly this time, with clean code, comprehensive documentation, and proper fail-safes. Every morning, we'd show up at 9 a.m. and work until 5 p.m. No overtime, no emergency calls, no weekend drama. Just professional consulting work at professional rates. Austin got to see how a real system should be built from the ground up. I got to enjoy the looks on people's faces when they realized how much they'd depended on systems they'd never bothered to understand. The best part was watching the company try to function without their legacy technical debt. The new systems Nathan had championed kept failing in creative ways. The cloud migration he'd insisted on turned into a disaster that cost them 3 major clients. The agile methodology he'd implemented had somehow made everything take twice as long. By week 4, word had gotten around the industry about TechBridge's operational problems. Austin showed me articles on TechCrunch and LinkedIn discussing the cautionary tale of firing experienced technical staff without proper transition planning. "You're famous," Austin said, pointing to a quote from an industry expert. "This situation highlights why institutional knowledge matters more than flashy new frameworks." "Not famous," I corrected. "Proven right. There's a difference." Week 6, we finished the project. The new compliance system passed all federal tests on the first try. Austin had learned more about enterprise architecture in 6 weeks than most people learn in 2 years, and I'd proven that experience isn't something you can replace with enthusiasm and buzzwords. Rodriguez shook my hand in the parking lot on our last day. "Bob, I know this whole situation was unfortunate. Is there any chance you'd consider coming back full-time? We could really use your expertise." "Thanks, but no. Austin and I have other projects lined up," which was true. Phoenix Tech Consulting had picked up 3 new clients during our TechBridge engagement. Apparently, word travels fast when you can solve problems other people can't figure out. 2 months later, I got a package delivered to my house. No return address, just a FedEx box with careful handwriting on the label. Inside was a bottle of 25-year-old single malt whiskey and a handwritten note. "Mr. Callahan, heard about the consulting work at TechBridge. Professional respect from one technical architect to another. Next time they'll know who really runs the show." Patricia Webb, Global Tech. I opened the bottle that evening and poured myself 2 fingers while I worked on the Mustang's transmission. The whiskey was smooth, expensive, and tasted like validation. Austin stopped by around 8 p.m. to go over our next project, a 3-month engagement with a medical device company that needed help with their FDA compliance systems. "So what's the lesson here?" he asked, settling into a lawn chair in my garage. I looked up from the transmission housing, wiped my hands on a shop rag, and smiled. Simple. You can outsource code, but you can't outsource experience. And you should never fire the guy who holds the keys unless you're absolutely sure you know where he hid the spares. Austin laughed. Think they learned that lesson? Maybe. Or maybe they'll hire another consultant to tell them why their next project failed. I raised my glass of whiskey toward the Mustang. The car was almost finished now. New engine, rebuilt transmission, fresh paint, proper restoration done right. Just like everything else in life, it turned out better when you took the time to do it properly the first time. "Here's to building things that last," I said. Austin clinked his beer bottle against my glass. "And to getting paid what you're worth." Outside, the desert evening was cooling down. Inside my garage, surrounded by the tools of my trade and the project I was passionate about, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 18 years of corporate work. Complete satisfaction. Phoenix Tech Consulting was booked solid for the next 8 months. The Mustang would be show-ready by Christmas. And somewhere across town, TechBridge Solutions was probably still trying to figure out what had hit them. Life was good,